Hi, I'm Rebecca, and this class is yoga for people with low vision. So I recommend starting out on your yoga mat, sitting with the two long ends of your mat to your right and left, and the two shorter ends of your mat to your front and back, and start out sitting in the middle of your mat. You can come into any seated position if crossing the shins in front of you. Some people call this crisscross applesauce. That's a great way to start out, but you can come into any seat that feels comfortable for you. Allow your shoulders to relax and sit up nice and tall, trying to kind of straighten your back, really lengthen your spine. Feel your rear end or your sit bones connected to the mat. And notice if you're leaning a little more weight on one side than another. Notice if both sides of your torso could be nice and long, equally long. And relax the shoulders away from your ears. Let's take a few moments just to drop into our breath and our body. You can allow your eyes to close. And notice if you're squeezing the eyes closed, allow that to soften. Soften the space between the eyebrows and in the forehead. And try to relax your jaw. So if you notice the back teeth are clenched together, move them away from each other. Give them a little space. If your tongue is glued to the top of your mouth, let it come to sit down at the bottom of your mouth. Notice that kind of new space that's created. And then tuning into our breath here, noticing the feeling of the breath, expanding your chest with each inhale in. Notice the recoil of the chest and belly with each exhale out. And as you take these breaths here, notice if you can hear that quiet internal sound of the breath coming in on the inhale and floating out on your exhale. Let's take two more breaths here. Again, trying to listen for that quiet internal sound of your inhales and exhales. And then allow your eyes to start to flutter open. Let your hands come down to the mat on either side of your body. I like to tent the fingers, feeling the fingertips on the mat for a moment. Sitting up nice and tall. And then let's start a little movement here. So place your left hand nice and firmly onto the mat and reach your right hand palm up to the ceiling. And then start to reach your right arm over to the left. So we're taking this little side stretch. Now sometimes when we do this, we feel like our right sit bone gets a little bit lighter, the right side of the butt might lift a little bit. Really firmly ground it to the mat so that the hips and the rear end stay nice and even here. And then we're reaching and striving with that right arm to kind of bend it over to the left side so that from the right hip through the right fingers, we feel nice and long. Now we can check in with that left arm. If you notice that the left shoulder is kind of creeping up around your ear, or you're sort of locking and straightening the left elbow, let the left elbow soften, let the left shoulder soften away from the ear, and focus on the sensation on your right side. And then on your next inhale, come back up to sit. Once more, we kind of tent the fingers, hands on either side of our torso. Take a deep breath in and a big breath out through your mouth. Now plant your right hand down to the mat, so a little away from the body so it's nice and supportive. Reaching the left hand, palm facing up towards the ceiling, and then continuing for the left arm to reach up and over to the right. So by this time, our left palm is facing in the direction of the mat. Again, we check in with the hips or the rear end, making sure we're not lighter on the left side, but that both sides of our rear end really firmly pressing into the mat. And we're striving and reaching up and over with that left arm, really feeling that stretch on the left side. The right elbow can have a little bend or softness. We try to relax the right shoulder away from the ear. You can always adjust where that right hand is on the mat so that it feels supportive, that you could still relax the arm. And then inhale, make your way back up to sit. Again, hands, fingertips on the mat on either side of your body, still seated nice and tall. Take a deep inhale in through your nose and out through your mouth. And we'll move on to a twist. The right fingers are going to come onto the mat behind you. So onto the mat behind you, kind of rolling that right shoulder back, right in line with kind of the center of your back. And then your left hand can come to your right knee. Allow your torso to twist to the right, rolling that right shoulder blade back, trying to open our chest over towards the right side of our mat. Again, the lower half of our body stays nice and firm, nice even weight. And we're thinking about the twist happening from our navel or belly button up through the crown of our head. You could turn your head and move the right, and move your chin towards your right shoulder if that feels okay for you. And then start to walk your hands back through center. And we'll do the same thing, twisting to the left. So when you're ready, bring the left fingertips behind you. So they come onto the mat behind you, kind of in line with the center of your back. Right hand comes to your left knee and take that twist over to the left side. So again, we kind of roll the left shoulder back. Our lower body stays nice and firm, nice and even on the mat. And this twist happens in our torso from the navel up. You might start to turn the head, moving your chin over your left shoulder. If that feels lousy on the neck or if it feels like too much, we can always just kind of let the head stay at center. And then start to make your way back to center, back to our original starting position, hands on the mat on either side of the body, sitting up nice and tall. Take a deep inhale in and a big exhale out. And then from here, we're going to make our way to hands and knees. So if you are in the cross-legged seat, you could uncross the legs, start to swing them around behind you, making your way to all fours to hands and knees. So you could even take a moment to kind of shift your weight a little side to side. Pick up your hands, pick up each knee, and then feel this nice firm tabletop pose, or all fours position. In yoga, we call this tabletop pose. So your shoulders kind of line up over the elbows, elbows line up over the wrists, your hips line up over your knees, and then feel like your back is nice and straight. And if you're not sure, you can always take a moment to kind of play around here. You might let your belly sink to the mat a little bit and feel how that makes a little dip in the back. And then you can even kind of arch your back up towards the ceiling. It rounds the back, and then find that nice neutral position where the back feels nice and straight. So something in between those two movements. And then extend the right leg behind you. Send the right leg straight back towards the back of the mat. And then let your right toes come down onto the mat. So your right toes come to rest on the mat. You're reaching back through that right heel, lifted out of the shoulders, your belly pulling in and up. Staying nice and active here. Let's take a couple breaths here. You can kind of reach back through the right heel, feel that movement, or feel a little stretch along your right calf. And then shift just a little more weight into your right hand so you can get lighter on the left and reach the left fingertips forward. So left fingertips can stay on the mat, but we extend the left arm a little forward of the shoulder Staying strong in the right arm. And then see if you can lift your left hand. So my left thumb faces up to the ceiling. I'm reaching my left arm forward. And then pull your belly in. Get nice and strong in your core. Lift out of the right shoulder. Now this might be enough balance. This might feel challenging enough. If you'd like to challenge yourself a little more, you can get lighter on the right toes or even lift the right toes away from the mat. And take a moment to play with your balance. So the more we stay active in that right shoulder, the more we keep our core engaged, the better our balance will be. And then from here, you can bring your left hand back down to the mat, your right knee back down to the mat, and just return to that original hands and knees pose. Now, extend the left leg straight back behind you, and then let your left toes come to rest down on the mat. So my left toes are curled onto the mat, and I can kind of reach back through the left heel, like I'm striving for my left heel to reach to the back of the mat. Maybe you feel that stretch in the calf muscle, the back of your left leg, or even the space behind the left knee. And then we shift just a little weight into the left hand so that you can start to kind of crawl or walk your right fingers forward. So kind of tenting onto the right fingers for a moment, that right hand, forward of the shoulder. Really lift out of the left shoulder, core engaged, and start to reach your right arm forward and up. So my right thumb is facing the ceiling like I'm going to shake someone's hand. Now again, this in itself can be plenty of balance, but if you want to challenge yourself more, you could start to lift that left leg, really keep the belly pulling in. Try to really press the mat away from you with the left hand so we're strong in the left arm and left shoulder. My core is engaged. It feels like I'm almost like I'm pulling my navel, my belly button in towards my spine. Taking a moment to play with that balance, especially if this is new. Don't worry if it's not coming easily today. That's always why we practice. And then you can bring your right hand, your left knee back down to the mat, return to that hands and knees pose. Now we'll find what's called cat and cow. So our cat pose, we round our spine up towards the ceiling. So you're pressing your hands into the mat, kind of pressing your shoulder blades up towards the ceiling. So rounding the spine. You can again kind of pull the navel in and then drop your head. So the crown of your head is in the direction of the mat. Your chin comes in towards your chest, and we're arching the upper back towards the ceiling. So making this rounding in the spine, that's our cat pose. And then as you inhale, we're going to reverse that. So we're going to let the belly start to drop to the mat. I'm going to lift my hips, point my tailbone a little up towards the ceiling, and then feel like you're trying to pull the chest between your hands. The face comes to shine forward, and and this is our cow pose. And we're going to repeat these two poses. So again, we round the back, drop the head, bring the chin to the chest, pull your navel, your belly button in towards your spine, and then drop the belly, lift the hips, let your face shine forward and up, pull the chest between your arms. And let's do that a few more times, rounding the back, dropping the head, chin to chest, and then dropping the belly, kind of lifting the sit bones, pulling the chest forward, looking forward. One more round. Round the upper back, pull the navel in, drop the head. That's our cat pose. And inhale, drop the belly. Lift your hips to the ceiling, pull your chest forward, allow your face to shine forward. And then come back into your neutral spine. So back into that nice straight spine, back on hands and knees. Now from here, you could separate your hands just a little bit wider than your shoulders, just to make a little bit of space. And we're going to step our right foot in between the hands. So we're going to pull that right knee forward, step the right foot in between the hands. And take your time to come into this position. You can always kind of inch the right foot a little further forward. As you bend into your right knee, you might feel a little stretch along like the front left side of your hip or thigh, so that we're in this lunge. So my back left knee, the top of my left foot still on the mat, and my right foot on the mat in between the hands. So I'm in a lunge. Plant your left hand down to the mat and reach your right arm up towards the ceiling. So left hand on the mat, Right arm reaches straight up to the ceiling. My right palm is facing the right. And then bring your right hand back down to the mat. Come up to the fingertips of your right hand so you have a little bit more height. And then reach your left arm up and open towards the ceiling. And my left palm is facing out to the left. I'm leaning the left shoulder blade back. A little bit of balance here again. And then bring your left hand back down. And then you're going to start to straighten your right leg. So you'll push your hips back a little bit. The right leg starts to extend. You might find that the right toes come to face the ceiling and you're balanced more on your right heel. Trying to send the hips back. So the hips are going to stay nice and square. You can always walk the hands back more underneath your shoulders if you need a little bit more support here. You can come up onto your fingertips. And the right leg doesn't have to straighten completely. If there's still a little bend in it, and that's as far as you can go, not a problem. Think about your chest and the crown of the head reaching forward towards that top short end of your mat. And take one more breath here. And then we can start to bend the right knee. If you move the hands back, you might walk them a little forward again. And then you can press your hands down to the mat and bring the right knee back to meet the left. So we return to the hands and knees position where we started. Take an inhale in through your nose and out through your mouth. And then let's try this again with the left side. So when you're ready, stepping the left foot between your hands. And again, you could always inch the left foot a little further forward if you need to. We allow the left knee to bend a little bit here. So we find ourselves in this lunge, taking your time to find it, taking your time to get the left foot forward. You can always grab your left leg and kind of pull it forward with your hands if you need. And then my right hand comes to plant down onto the mat underneath the right shoulder, and your left arm reaches up to the ceiling, left palm facing out to the left. And then let your left fingers come back down to the mat. So again, we're kind of up on the fingertips of the left hand, so we have a little more height. My left hand, again, kind of lined up under the left shoulder, and then I can start to reach my right arm up, my right palm facing out to the right. And then bring your right hand back down to the mat. And then we start to extend or straighten the left leg. So my hips move back a little bit to help straighten the left leg. You might come up onto the left heel, so the left toes are pointing more up towards the ceiling. Think about your chest and the crown of your head kind of lengthening forward to the front of your mat. Remembering you can always have a little bit of a bend or softness in the left knee. If it doesn't straighten completely, that's totally fine. And you can always walk the hands back more underneath the shoulders for some more support. You could be up on your fingertips for more support here. And then you can walk your hands forward again. If you did walk them back, start to bend the left knee. The sole, the bottom of our left foot comes back onto the mat. You can replant the hands and bring that left knee back to meet the right. So we return to hands and knees. So now we're going to move into downward facing dog. This is a really popular yoga position. I'm going to talk us through how to come into it. So you can bring your hands forward about one handprint from where they are now. So about one handprint forward so that my hands are slightly in front of the shoulders. And then I'm going to curl my toes under, tuck my toes under, lift your knees off the mat, and then start to send your chest back to your thighs, send your rear end up into the air, and try to straighten the arms. Now your knees can always maintain a little bend. The legs don't have to straighten here. For some of us, the legs might straighten. The heels aren't touching the mat. They're generally lifted away from the mat. And there's at least a little separation between the feet, about hips distance apart. But you're always also welcome to go a little bit wider if that feels more stable for you with the feet. So I have my fingers spread really wide, planting my whole hand into the mat, trying to kind of equally distribute the weight in my hand so it's not just in the heels of my hands. Try to straighten the arms. Try to straighten your back and really lift your hips up high. It's like you want to put your butt where the wall behind you joins the ceiling, so up and back. And my chest is moving back towards the thighs. And again, this is downward facing dog or down dog. And then from here, we can tap our knees back down to the mat. And we'll come into a child's pose. You can untuck your toes, separate your knees just a little wider, but bring your big toes to touch. And then let your hips settle back towards the heels and straighten the arms forward, palms on the mat. Let your forehead come to rest on the mat. And that is our child's pose. Let's take another breath here. And then you can lift your head. From here, from our child's pose, you can start to walk your hands towards your knees. This is going to bring you, lifting your torso, this is going to bring you to kind of sit on your heels for a moment. Really just long enough to drop your hips over to the right side, and you can start to swing the legs around in front of you. You might kind of feel your way back to more like the middle of your mat. So now we're sitting, our knees are bent, our feet are on the mat. You can have the hands a little behind you for some support. And then start to bend your elbows and roll yourself down to the mat, down onto your back. And then you can let the arms come along your sides, the back of your head comes to the mat. And then we're going to meet, so our knees are bent, our feet are on the mat. Think about lining your ankles, your feet up underneath your knees. And if your arms are along your side, as you're kind of walking the heels in towards your body, you might feel that you might touch your heels with your middle or index finger. And if they don't quite touch, not a problem at all. Bring them in as close as possible. Let's end our class today with a back bend. So my feet are pressing into the mat. I feel my upper arms, my upper back pressing into the mat. And then from there, start to lift your hips away from the mat and start to press the front of your hips towards the ceiling. Press your shoulder blades, your upper back into the mat. And this is our bridge pose. So you could think here about your chest moving towards your chin, your hips lifting away from the mat. You could stay just as you are, and if it feels good for you, you might try to interlace your fingers together underneath your back, so the palms face in towards each other, the thumbs cross, and the fingers interlace. Let's take one more breath here in our bridge pose. If you did interlace the fingers, you can release them and allow the hips and your back to roll back down to the mat. And then you can lift your feet off the mat, bring the knees and thighs into your chest. You could wrap the arms around the legs and give the legs a little hug. You might rock side to side if that feels good for you. And then we'll end our session with what is called Shavasana or corpse pose. So you can release the legs and just extend the legs forward. So straightening the legs, let the arms come down along your sides. You're just lying here on your back on the mat. Sometimes it's nice to kind of walk the shoulder blades a little down the back. I like to rock my hips a little side to side and feel like I can kind of lengthen the legs away from the body a little bit more. And again, we allow our eyes to close and our face to relax. So we soften the skin around the eyes. We're not sort of squeezing the eyes closed. Relax the space in between the eyebrows. Relax the lines in the forehead. And allow yourself to just be heavy and restful, surrendering into gravity for a few moments. Again, you can notice the feeling of the breath filling the chest, the belly, the lungs with each breath in, and feel the recoil of the chest, the belly, and the lungs with each breath out. We'll take 2 more breaths here. And then you can start to wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Bring a little movement back into the body. You could bend your right knee and place your right foot on the mat. Bend your left knee, place your left foot on the mat. And then bring the knees and thighs into your chest. Stretch the right arm up and over your head. And roll onto your right side. And then use the left hand on the floor, the mat in front of your chest to press yourself up to sit. And just return to any seated position. Thank you all for joining me today for Yoga for Low Vision. Stay tuned for more videos and have a great rest of your day.